Nupss to you all, and welcome back to Baldur's Gate 3, where this playthrough is just getting more and more intense by the second. And as we left it last time, yes, there was a massacre, another massacre, which is, you know, a bummer. It is absolutely a bummer, but it wasn't intentional, but it is a situation that occurred, and that's the way we're going to deal with it. So my plan, as we entered the mausoleum yesterday, and kind of got met up with Balthazar, who looks like an incredibly hard, no doubt going to be a boss, but sent us on some trials and things. So my game plan for today is it kind of feels like things are coming together with Ketheric and the zone, but I still haven't explored everywhere. There's a lot of areas of the map that are still shrouded. Is to play through the story and then make sure, before I head back to Moonrise Towers, I really want to, like, make sure I've seen as much as I can. There's some weird things happening in Act 2. It's not as polished as Act 1. I mentioned that yesterday. And part of that is there are quest icons and things on my map that I can't do anything with. Probably, I'm not saying the game is bugged, it's probably because I've ended up killing people who are associated with this. Like, Oliver is one of them. His quest icon just sits there. Maybe somebody in the town had some dealings, maybe his mother and father or some family relation was there, and the game's like, well, you found Oliver, so you should do the next bit, but you can't now because those people are dead. So there's probably some things like that going on. And I also really wanted to finish up with the guy who wants to murder, who wants to punish a lady who died afterwards. I have found her note. Really interesting. I like these little stories. It's what drew me into The Witcher 3, really, is the stories where you don't really know the answer, but you have an inkling. So this guy, and why I'm interested in this little mini side story compared to all the horrors that are going on, is, hey, this lady snitched. She's basically a snitch or a rat, and she caused her friends to die. But then you find her note, and she's so in deep with the religion of the zone and the punishments that come with it, and the fact that if she doesn't tell the Inquisitors about people's heretical comments, which is what her friends made while they were drunk, and they were just shooting the breeze, right? They're just shooting the breeze. Then that's really bad. Like, you know, she has to do this, even though she doesn't want to. You read in the note, it's like, they're promising me they won't be harmed, but I have to report it, and she does. So I'm looking for. I found the note in the bar after the drinking competition, so I'm going to go and sort that out as well. So I've got all these mini stories that I want to get tied up, which makes for a great game. Like, the main story is great, but also everything else is great. It's not just filler, Starfield. It's other things that are going on. So I'm in the mausoleum, and I just spoke to Balthazar, and then I had to do the trials. I kind of had an inkling that this was going to be really hard, based on my chat going, here we go, lol, lol, Pepe laugh, all these kind of things. But honestly, I didn't find them hard at all. But I think part of that is I solved them in ways that other people didn't, and they struggled with them much more. My first one was a stealth mission with these shadows that I had to avoid, these, like, patrolling shadows, and one of them just stopped. Whether it was bugged or not, I don't know. One of them just stood still, so I just walked past it and finished the trial. Job done. Another one was to fight the mirror version of my party. I was actually dreading this because it called the self-same trial, so I guessed what it was going to be. And they were incredibly weak. Whether that means my party sucks, I don't know. It might be. It could be. But I clapped them in 2 turns. It was like, oh, okay, these guys suck. The final one was one people the next one. One of the next ones was a Shrouded in Darkness puzzle, where I had to go across, like, a chasm. But the map to the flooring is what you stood on, and it definitely became apparent while I was streaming this, as so many people didn't notice that. I get called blind all the time because I do miss some obvious things, or it's certainly obvious to people who know what the answer is, right? As always, it's always obvious if you already know what the answer is, or perhaps on your playthrough you spotted it straight away, and I didn't. But this time I was like, there's a map on the floor, and I took a screenshot of it, and I was like, well, there's the map. And not only that, whether they changed this from launch or whatever, I don't know. I could literally just see the floor as I was walking on it. Like, it was very clear where the floor was. I mean, it was, you know, obscure, but it was obvious as to where it was. So I just walked through and grabbed it and was on my merry way and passed all the trials. But then I came across an encounter which is really interesting. As I was exploring the map, there was, like, a cat that was a big, like, panther-type cat that was running around. And every time you went near it, it ran off. I was like, ooh, there's something going on here. And as I was following it, it's clearly an ambush. It's so blatantly an ambush as it's waiting for you next to a pile of corpses. So I decided to explore a little bit more and circled around and did find a huge mess of, like, ogre creatures above the room that were ready to jump down, or they were going to use ranged attacks on you once you attacked this panther. And so this is a little bit where, as much as best intentions are, you can unfortunately get influenced sometimes. And so I just round out the fireball. I'm going to surprise them. I'm going to get massive damage on them. I'm going to be able to like fireball and sunbeam right through them and shred all these enemies to pieces, because it's clearly bad. But I can see people's like, he's not talking, he's not talking, he's not talking. Now, I want to be clear. I tried to talk to the cat. I put on animal talking and went to talk to him, but it didn't work. When I moused over it, there was no talk option over the mouse over. So I was like, oh, you can't talk to me. It's just you go and attack. The cat is like, the cat is bait. So as you approach the cat, then they'll attack you. But that seem to be the case. And the ogre has also been ensnared by Raphael. And is trapped by a song to get there. I think I almost convinced him to, like, help me out, but it didn't go that way, so I had to kill him. But it wasn't a particularly hard fight. But that was unfortunate as the way it went. And then it was time to go down into the tunnel. I'd solved everything. It was time to go and deal with things. But as I was getting ready, I went to the camp. And as it turns out, Raphael comes and tells us about the scars on Astarion. And a couple of weird things happen here. One is that there's a rite to Ascension where somebody basically becomes Blade. One of the vampires becomes Blade. They become a Daywalker and have a lot of power. And, you know, obviously, Cazador wants that power, etc., etc. I was like, okay, and he needs to kill all the vampires, including Astarion. I was like, okay, that's an interesting development for Astarion. I'm not super into Astarion. I know he's like a fan favorite, but for me, he's kind of funny sometimes, but he fits he's more of a practical purpose. He's more of a really good wrench or a screwdriver than he is, you know, someone I'm down with. After the sleep, I went back to start the final trial, right? I wanted to rest up and get my spell slots back. Into the Shadowfell we went, where Balthazar appeared, and I was like, oh, poop. Balthazar has used us. He's like, well, I just followed you. You solved all the trials, and I just followed you. And I was like, oh, okay, we probably shouldn't have done that. And down at the bottom is the Night Song, all strapped in and ready to go. And we got the dialogue options. Obviously, Balthazar is bad. I mean, this is a guy with, like, a bloody pentagram carved into his face, right? And, you know, there's no way you're not getting the vibe Balthazar is a jerk. The Night Song, the only conflict I had was that the Night Song living is what gives Ketheric his immortality. So I was like, we're probably going to have to kill the Night Song. Regardless, Night Song is a person. But I'm going to kill Balthazar anyway. So I got into that combat. Actually wiped on this very quickly. Huge amount of ads. Very bunched into a corner when you start the encounter, which meant a lot of the bigger ads could walk over and shove me off the cliff, which is instantaneous death. So that was a real bummer. But one thing I noticed during the first pull is that Balthazar was just spamming poison attacks constantly. So I came back and regrouped and just put poison resistance elixir on everybody and clapped this encounter so hard. Like, absolutely clapped it. Not only did I reposition away so I couldn't be shoved in my first turn, but the fact that his damage was practically zero on me, and he's the main threat. Every other ad is not there. One thing I really like about where we're at right now in the game, and has made the game combat so much more fun, I had the same thing with Divinity, is not only have the spells of the team expanded nicely, but everything's synergizing together, and I'm learning how to use each person effectively. I've discovered the benefits of haste on my Barbarian. So my Barbarian now has like 4 actions, does massive damage, and has massive movement. So my Barbarian essentially can clean out like half a room. As long as they're not super high health enemies, my Barbarian will just run around a room and just like clap, 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 clap. So many enemies. I have Astarion, who I now I'm good with understanding how his attacks work to get the most out of him, who supports that role of like, oh, this is a high health enemy, so we hit this with the barb, do tons of damage, and then Astarion can do sneaky attack and do huge crits, which generally bring them down. I now know Karlach, who needs to maintain concentration. Concentration's a whole mechanic that I'm not a massive fan of. I get why it happens, though, because the buffs you get from consecration are incredibly powerful. Like, haste is ridiculous. The divine angels that I spawn with Shadowheart are really, really powerful. But it really limits your spell choices, I find, because some of the spells are just overwhelmingly good for your team. Like, with Karlach, why would I not want haste on my Barbarian, where it, like, triples the output of that character, if not more, especially with movement? So, of course I'm going to maintain that. So, Karlach has now taken this role of, like, keep Karlach as far away from any enemy as possible, so the odds of them attacking her are really low, unless the AI targets people who are doing concentration. And then just have her pop out, do a massive spell, a fireball, an ice storm, something like that. That does huge damage. And then just move her away, out of line of sight, max range away, and just keep her off in a corner. And Shadowheart now has taken this tank role. I really want to modify her going forward to have less chance of breaking concentration. Because having her angels up and just having her, like, front line, she has loads of saving throw gear now. So hitting her is really hard. She has the highest armor count of everybody in the party. So I have her as, like, this front paladin tank, essentially. Not only healing the rest of the team, but just, like, supporting everybody in loads of different ways. And she now has a massive damage output with Sunbeam, which we use in massive encounters. So, needless to say, Balthazar didn't last. Then he came to this cutscene. And again, I thought we were going to have to kill the Night Song. And Shadowheart, obviously, Shah versus Saloon, the two religions, one of darkness, one of light, really comes to a head here, because the Night Song is not exactly thankful for being freed. She's grateful, sure, but she's also like, you know, there's more to her than meets the eye, let's say that. She's not a cowering damsel in distress, let's put it that way. And so it comes down to Shadowheart grabbing the spear, which I had Shadowheart use the spear for RP reasons. Even though it's completely ineffective compared to our other Sunbeam weapon. But I had her with the spear in case we needed it during the fight, and there was some RP for it, but she gets the spear. And it came to the decision, it's like, do you tell Shadowheart what to do? And I did this in the past with Lazy, and Shadowheart killed Lazy. But my RP reason for this, and again, I do play it as my character would, is that the Shah versus Saloon situation, Salune, or whatever you want to say, it's really Shadowheart's deal. I don't know who the Night Song is. I don't really care. Just some lady who's been trapped down here. As far as I know, Ketheric's wife. Whatever. And so, I let Shadowheart make the decision. I thought, this is what I would do. Shadowheart's her own person. She's good. She's dealing with all the religion and stuff. This would be a good idea. And she spared who turned out to be a giant winged angel. I went from, I don't care about this person. It's like, you're not moving into the camp with me too. Oh, you can stay in the camp. Dame Alien, I think she's called. And is like, oh god, this is like Tyrael or whatever from Diablo. I was like, oh Christ, this is a great character. This is really cool. And then she's like, right, we're going to Moonrise Towers and we're going to destroy Ketheric. And I was like, yeah, let's do that. But first, I need to explore the map. This was a great little boss battle. Great twist. I loved the turning into the angel. And also the conversion at this point, essentially, of Shadowheart to, you know, see the light in many, many ways. So after that, I really wanted to, like I said, it's time to explore a little bit. I went back to the hospital. The hospital was hilarious. The House of Healing. It reminded me very much of Bloodborne's DLC, where the sort of nurses went around with big brain slugs on their head, and they're treating people who are clearly dead, and they're just like, ooh, they're just resting, and we're very weird. They are very weird. The House of Healing was very creepy, and they keep talking about the Master Surgeon. I was like, oh, this is going to be sick. This is going to be awesome. This is going to be so fun. And going into the House of Healing, I spoke to everybody, and then it was time to see the Master Surgeon, who is messed up and performing live surgery on a living person, no anesthetic, just shredding him up and like, oh, you're not hurting him enough. We need to let the flesh sing and all this stuff. I was like, oh, this is sick. This is gross. I got into the dialogue with him, and oh my. At the beginning of the game, inspiration, which allows you, if you fail a dice roll, you can use your inspiration through events you've had in the game to have another go. At the beginning of the game, I was very blasé with them because I didn't really understand the mechanic that I was earning them as a currency. So Act 2, I kind of slowed down a bit. I'm like, okay, we're not going to re-roll this. I need to keep my inspiration for probably a more important decision. And arguably, this is not a particularly important decision compared to what we're about to do, probably with Ketheric, right? It's probably that. But I had to do it here because through the dialogue, there was a chance to have the nurses perform surgery on him by convincing him that they're not learning well because he's not on the operating table to guide them as they're trying, and that would be a good idea. I wasted all my inspiration on this. I low rolled so hard until the very, very last roll where we got this beautiful cutscene.
I see now.
Worth.
By example,
Totally
I must
worth.
edify and quell the light that blinds us. Come, sisters, soothe me.
Amazing. So worth it. So worth blowing the inspiration. Absolutely worth in so many different ways. And then that was it. My map was pretty clear of everything. So it was time to go to Moonrise Towers. The first thing I wanted to do was free the prisoners. As I arrived, Dame has eradicated everybody in Moonrise Towers. So my biggest fear, which was confirmed, is that the prisoners are probably already dead. Which is a real shame, because I feel the only chance I had to save them was at the very beginning of the act, when I'm just sort of establishing what the hell is going on in the zone. So I missed this opportunity, unfortunately. But what I did find was a blood pit, because I was like, well, where are the bodies, right? Do the prisoners have notes or anything like that? And I found a huge pit of death where they throw all the dead bodies. Again, I will admit, this was somebody egging me on, and I don't even know if they knew this was real. They were just like, go on, jump in it, jump in it. So I thought, balls to it, we'll see what happens. Usually you can't just, like, physically jump into a hole. You totally can. You absolutely can. This game is ridiculous. It just keeps giving and giving. And so I jumped into the hole and found a whole underground mind flayer lair. And again, I have this objective, and this is Baldur's Gate 3 in a nutshell. It's like, right, I'm going here to deal with Ketheric. I've done the rest of the zone to go to Ketheric. Oh, boom! There's an entirely new zone down here with loads of things going on that you need to know about. And I'm like, what the hell? What the hell? And so I'm mooching through this blood-ridden, stained area with all these extra mind flayers and worms and things like that. I had this whole of like 40 minutes, an hour of exploring and messing around, which is just ridiculous. Just absolutely ridiculous. It was crazy. It led to another boss fight down there, where we freed Methuzahla. She was trapped in there, and all these kind of things was going on, and ultimately led to a fight with, after I finished that, I went to the top of Moonrise Tower. I had the first fight with Ketheric, which was surprisingly easy. Again, I feel like my characters are pretty strong, despite the fact I was very concerned by this point that losing the Last Hope, or Light's Hope, or whatever it's called, village, I had lost a lot of experience because I wasn't unable to do a bunch of quests. My characters feel really strong, but I think more of the cases I'm getting better at the game. Mostly. I'm still making some elementary errors, for sure. But, like, again, putting haste on my Barb and then hiding Karlach outside, I kind of rinsed this fight very, very quickly, and Dame helps you out as well, which then led to going into another Mind Flayer area with little brains wandering around and things like that. And this is where Methuzahla was in the was in a tube and managed to free her and approached to the cutscene. The big cutscene. So Ketheric escapes. So this is like the final showdown with Ketheric, where we meet our next two antagonists, who are going to be a lady in blood who seems like a psychopath murderer, sort of DC Universe Zaz type character, and another guy who looks like a hobo. He looks a bit like Clive from FF16, honestly. I can't remember his goddamn name. But he looks like Hobo Man, who's probably the brains. She's the murderer. He's the brains. And these three are all working together. But we do discover from this cutscene, as we're about to get into the final boss, is that the actual enemy is this giant Mega Brain. So we got Mother Brain. We got Mother Brain coming up. So we need some Samus Aran action here. We got some giant Metroid Brain that's coming. That's like a big deal. This Mega Brain that controls all the Illithid. We then get into the fight, and Isabel's there. I was really wondering at this point, where is Isabel? I wiped... This fight was really interesting, and I didn't finish it as I'm recording this. I haven't finished it yet, because I had one go at it, where Ketheric died really easily, and I had to kill Isabel, because she's mind-controlled. And then he transforms into phase 2. I was actually a little shocked as to how quickly his health was going down, so I didn't heal up or anything. My spider senses should have told me there was a phase 2. But we end up fighting a giant skeleton, very reminiscent of the Dark Souls 3 boss, Lord Wodir? Wodir, I think he's called. Very reminiscent of that, an enormous skeleton boss that has an aura of bone chill, which means you can't heal if you're in melee. And considering 3 of my characters, Shadowheart, my barbarian, and Astarion are melee-based characters, made things a little tricky, especially because it appeared to have a giant frontal cleave. I would say it's probably 110 degree cleave. And Dame seems to be the main target of it because she's helping as well, also melee, which meant all my characters were getting cleaved. So I almost killed this. I want to be clear on this. I definitely did more damage than its HP. But it also healed up from ads that get close to it. It consumes them, heals up, and then does a death bolt on you, which I survived in this fight for a really long time. But I did ultimately wipe with about 60 health left on the boss, even though I'd done probably 200 more damage than that. I just couldn't quite CC the ads enough to get it done, which was a real bummer, because one-shotting it would have been really nice. But I had to stop there. That's where we have to stop today, because I just didn't have time to continue on, and that's going to be my first goal for tomorrow. And I imagine we're heading to Act 3. So, are we approaching the end? My ultimate... I think I should put a little summary here, because I would almost guarantee this is the end of Act 2, because, you know, we're fighting the main boss of the area. Act 2 is very, very different to Act 1. Act 1 was ultra dense, full and brimming with establishing, full of life as well. Like, the amount of people who are around in Act 1. Everywhere you go. You go down a road, there's another 5 people. You go to the Grove, there's tons and tons of people there. Like, there's so much life, villages, tons of villages, towns, all sorts of things, roads. Act 2, very different, because it's a desolate land. I really liked the change of pace. I super liked this. I saw it definitely buggier in a lot of places. I'm not going to list them off here, because there were minor things, graphical bugs, and some dialogue choices that were very strange, that I didn't run into in Act 1. I super liked this. I thought this was a great change of pace. It's still as full of content. It's just less densely packed together because they wanted to give that feeling of, like, yeah, this is desolate ruins. And then you'll find, like, a mausoleum, a house of healing, or the Moonrise Towers, which is brimming with life and lots of stories and little ghost stories and things that are located around the place. I would say, I guess it was slightly less content for those who want to measure that measuring stick, but it didn't matter to me because it changed the pace of the game in a different way. It almost gave it time to breathe and gave you a different horror-style atmosphere. Really enjoyed it. And if this isn't the end of Act 2, I'll find that out tomorrow. All right, so thank you for watching, guys. We'll be back with more updates very, very soon. Bye.